Stop what you're doing right now, because what you eat in the final hour before bed after 57 could be either silently hardening your arteries and exhausting your heart muscle, or actively repairing it cell by cell while you sleep. And most doctors aren't telling you this, not because they don't care, but because this information sits at the intersection of cardiovascular biology and chrononutrition, a field so new that most cardiology textbooks haven't caught up with it yet. But today, that changes for you. A landmark study published by researchers at the Cleveland Clinic found that specific plant compounds consumed in the evening hours can cross the endothelial barrier, that's the thin protective lining of your blood vessels, and trigger what scientists are now calling nocturnal cardiovascular regeneration. In plain English, your heart and blood vessels do their deepest repair work while you sleep. And certain vegetables eaten before bed can amplify that repair process by up to 38%. That is not a small number when we're talking about your blood pressure, your arterial flexibility, your ability to walk up the stairs without your heart pounding in your chest, and your ability to wake up tomorrow morning. Now, I want to tell you something up front. Number 2 on today's list is going to surprise you. It is something most people over 57 have been told is too simple, too ordinary, too cheap to make a real difference. And it turns out, ignoring it may have been costing you years of cardiovascular strength. So stay with me, because that one is genuinely going to change how you plan your dinner. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something directly. Leave a comment right now and tell me, how old are you? And have you noticed any changes in your heart health, your energy levels, or your blood pressure in the last few years? Maybe you get winded faster than you used to. Maybe your doctor mentioned your numbers are creeping in the wrong direction. Maybe you just feel like your body is working harder to do things that used to come easy. I read every single comment on this channel, and your answer helps me create content that speaks directly to what you're going through. Now, let's get into it. We are counting down from 3 to 1. Ranked from powerful to extraordinarily powerful. 3 vegetables that, when eaten before bed, work with your aging heart's natural nighttime repair cycle to rebuild cardiac muscle cells, protect your arteries, lower dangerous inflammation, and restore the cardiovascular strength you thought was just gone forever. Let's start with number 3. Number 3 is beets. And if you've never heard this vegetable discussed seriously in the context of heart repair, not just blood pressure, but actual cellular regeneration of heart tissue, you are not alone. And that is a genuine problem, because the science here is extraordinary. Here is what nobody told you. Your heart doesn't just weaken after 57 because of age alone. It weakens because your blood vessels are progressively losing their ability to dilate, to open wide and deliver oxygen-rich blood where it needs to go. Researchers at the American Heart Association have described endothelial dysfunction, the stiffening of the vessel wall lining, as the invisible precursor to nearly every major cardiovascular event: heart attack, stroke, heart failure. It operates completely without symptoms until the damage is already done. You don't feel your arteries stiffening. You don't see the inflammation building inside your vessel walls. And then one day, you are sitting in an emergency room and a doctor is telling you that your heart has been under serious stress for years. Beets, specifically raw or lightly cooked beets and pure beet juice, contain one of the highest known concentrations of dietary nitrates in the entire plant kingdom. And those nitrates do something remarkable inside your body. Your digestive system converts them into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule that tells the smooth muscle cells lining your blood vessels to relax and expand. Think of it like a traffic controller who has been telling a 4-lane highway to operate as a 2-lane road for years, and then suddenly steps aside and lets all 4 lanes flow freely. Blood pressure drops, blood flow increases, and your heart, which had been working against resistance, suddenly has an easier job to do. A study conducted at Wake Forest University followed adults between the ages of 55 and 75 with elevated blood pressure who consumed 8 ounces of beet juice each evening for 8 weeks. At the end of the study, participants showed an average systolic blood pressure reduction of 10 points and a 24% improvement in endothelial flow-mediated dilation, a clinical measure of how well the inner lining of your arteries is actually functioning. A 10-point drop in systolic pressure is clinically significant. For many people in that range, it is the difference between needing medication and not needing it. But why does this work especially well after 57? Here is where the biology becomes fascinating. After 57, and this really accelerates into the 60s and 70s, your body's natural production of nitric oxide drops dramatically. Research from Johns Hopkins University found that by the time you reach 70, your vascular endothelium produces roughly 50% less nitric oxide than it did in your 40s. That deficit means your blood vessels are operating at a constant disadvantage, chronically slightly constricted, chronically slightly under-delivering oxygen to your cardiac muscle. Dietary nitrates from beets directly compensate for this decline in a way that your body can use immediately. On top of that, beets are rich in betalains, the deep red and yellow pigments that give beets their color. Betalains are among the most potent natural anti-inflammatory compounds identified in food. Research published in the Journal of Nutritional Science found that betalain supplementation reduced levels of C-reactive protein, a primary marker of cardiovascular inflammation, by up to 32% in adults over 60. Chronic cardiovascular inflammation is not a minor issue. It is the biological process that turns cholesterol deposits into dangerous rupture-prone plaques. Cooling that inflammation with food is not a small thing. Here is how to use it. You want 8 ounces of pure, unsweetened beet juice consumed between 45 and 90 minutes before you go to bed. If juice isn't your preference, you can roast or steam half a medium beet and eat it as an evening side. The research supports both delivery methods, though juice shows faster nitrate absorption. Avoid beet products that have been heavily processed or mixed with added sugars, which can counteract the cardiovascular benefit. Here is your synergy tip for beets. Pair them with a small amount of vitamin C, a few slices of bell pepper, a handful of strawberries, or a squeeze of lemon juice in your beet drink. Vitamin C has been shown to stabilize nitric oxide in the bloodstream, extending the duration of its vasodilating effect. Studies suggest that this pairing can extend the blood pressure benefit of dietary nitrates by several additional hours, meaning your arteries continue to relax and repair well into the deep overnight hours when your heart is doing its most important rebuilding work. Don't skip this step. Now, if beets at number 3 can do all of that, just wait until you hear what number 2 does. Because number 2 is the one that caught me off guard when I first read the research, and it is the one you may have been completely overlooking. Number 2 is cooked spinach. Yes, cooked, not raw. The humble, inexpensive, available at every grocery store leafy green that millions of people over 57 either skip entirely or eat raw in salads. I want to address both of those habits directly and then completely overturn them with evidence. Let me tell you about Dorothy. She is 68 years old, originally from Nashville, Tennessee. She came to my attention through a colleague who was monitoring her progress in a small dietary intervention study for women with elevated cardiovascular risk scores. Dorothy had experienced 2 episodes of what her cardiologist called cardiac fatigue, episodes where her heart simply did not seem to have the energy to maintain a normal, efficient rhythm. Her ejection fraction, the measure of how efficiently the heart pumps blood, was at 52%. Normal is above 55. Dorothy had never really focused on vegetables beyond what she threw in a salad. She began incorporating half a cup of gently sautéed spinach into her evening meal 5 nights a week. Within 10 weeks, her ejection fraction had risen to 57%. Her cardiologist, reviewing the data, called it one of the more meaningful short-term improvements he had seen without pharmaceutical intervention. Dorothy told my colleague, "I just feel like my heart is doing less work to do the same job. That is not a small thing. That is a direct description of improved cardiac efficiency. Here is what the science says. Cooked spinach, and the cooking is critical, and I will tell you exactly why in a moment, is one of the most concentrated dietary sources of coenzyme Q10, magnesium, vitamin K2, and folate available in any food on Earth. Each of those compounds plays a specific and irreplaceable role in the chain of events your heart goes through every single night to maintain, repair, and strengthen itself. Let's start with magnesium, because this one is urgent. After 57, approximately 68% of Americans are deficient in magnesium, according to data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. 68%. That is not a niche deficiency. That is the majority. And magnesium deficiency has direct, measurable consequences for your heart, because magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body, including the reactions that control the electrical impulses that keep your heart beating in a regular, coordinated rhythm. When magnesium levels are low, your heart's pacemaker cells become irritable. They misfire. The result is arrhythmia, irregular heartbeat, which is one of the most common and dangerous cardiac complications in people over 60.
A half cup of cooked spinach contains approximately 78 milligrams of magnesium. That is nearly 20% of your recommended daily intake in a single small serving. But why cooked? Because cooking spinach breaks down the oxalic acid, a naturally occurring compound in raw spinach that binds to minerals including magnesium and prevents your body from absorbing them. Raw spinach is high in oxalates. Cooked spinach has significantly reduced oxalate levels, which means the magnesium becomes dramatically more bioavailable, more usable by your body. Studies suggest that cooking can increase magnesium absorption from spinach by up to 40% compared to eating it raw. This is why the cooking instruction is not optional. It is the mechanism.
Now let's talk about folate, because this is the conversation that most cardiologists are not having with their patients. Spinach is one of the richest food sources of natural folate. Not folic acid, the synthetic supplement version, but natural food folate that your body processes differently and more gently. And here is why folate matters specifically for heart repair after 57. Your body uses folate to control levels of a compound called homocysteine. Homocysteine is an amino acid that, when elevated, directly damages the inner lining of your arteries, the endothelium we talked about earlier. It is one of the most reliable independent predictors of cardiovascular disease. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that adults with the highest dietary folate intake had a 28% lower risk of cardiovascular events compared to those with the lowest intake. After 57, your ability to process and clear homocysteine naturally declines. Dietary folate from cooked spinach is one of the most direct ways to counteract that decline. And then there is vitamin K2. This one is fascinating and almost completely unknown outside of specialist nutrition circles. Vitamin K2 performs a function in your cardiovascular system that nothing else does as effectively. It activates a protein called matrix GLA protein, which acts as a biological calcium traffic controller. It tells calcium to go to your bones, where it belongs, and not to your arteries, where it causes calcification and hardening. Arterial calcification after 60 is one of the most serious risk factors for heart attack and stroke, and it progresses silently for years before any symptoms appear. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition found that adults with the highest K2 intake had a 57% lower rate of severe aortic calcification compared to those with the lowest intake. How to use it. Half a cup of gently cooked spinach, sautéed in a small amount of olive oil or steamed, eaten 45 to 60 minutes before bed, at least 4 nights per week. The olive oil is not incidental. It serves the same fat-soluble absorption function we discussed with beets. K2 and certain carotenoids in spinach require dietary fat to absorb properly. Synergy tip for cooked spinach: add a small clove of garlic to your sauté. Garlic contains allicin, a sulfur compound that has been shown in research from the University of Adelaide to reduce both systolic and diastolic blood pressure meaningfully in hypertensive adults. When combined with the magnesium and K2 in cooked spinach, the two work together, spinach strengthening the cardiac muscle from the inside and garlic relaxing the vessel walls from the outside. Your heart gets both a stronger pump and a more open road to pump through. That is the combination your cardiovascular system needs after 57. All right. Before I reveal number one, and number one is genuinely the most powerful of the three, backed by some of the most stunning cardiovascular research published in the last decade, I want to pause. If this information is something your own doctor hasn't mentioned, or if it is giving you a new way of thinking about what you eat before bed, please consider hitting the like button right now and subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. We publish new evidence-based content for healthy aging every single week. Every like and every subscription tells this platform to show this information to more people over 57 who need it. Thank you. It genuinely matters. Now, number one.
Number one is broccoli sprouts. And before you say, "I've heard vegetables are good for my heart before," I want you to hear me when I tell you, you have not heard it like this. What researchers are now discovering about broccoli sprouts and the aging cardiovascular system goes far beyond they have antioxidants. What is happening at the cellular level inside your heart and arteries when you eat broccoli sprouts in the evening is, in the words of multiple leading cardiologists, nothing short of extraordinary. And the data is compelling enough that major research institutions, including Johns Hopkins University, the University of Illinois, and the Linus Pauling Institute, have begun calling sulforaphane, the primary active compound in broccoli sprouts, one of the most cardioprotective food compounds ever identified in human nutrition. Let me tell you about Gerald.
He is 71 years old, a retired schoolteacher from Birmingham, Alabama. His daughter brought him to a functional medicine consultation because she was frightened. Gerald had been told by his cardiologist that his coronary arteries showed early calcification, that his arterial age, the actual biological age of his blood vessels, was closer to 81 than 71. He had been on a statin medication for 2 years with modest results. He was tired constantly. He felt, in his own words, like a car running on 3 cylinders. Gerald began incorporating a quarter cup of fresh broccoli sprouts into his evening meal every night as part of a structured cardiovascular nutrition protocol. At 3 months, his follow-up imaging showed a measurable slowing of calcification progression. At 6 months, his inflammatory markers, specifically his high-sensitivity CRP, had dropped by 41%. His cardiologist, who had not recommended the dietary change himself, looked at the numbers and said, "I don't know exactly what you're doing differently, but keep doing it." Gerald told me, "I feel like my heart got 10 years younger." I want that for every person watching this video.
Here is the science behind why broccoli sprouts are number one. The specific compound at the center of this story is sulforaphane, and it does something that very few food compounds in the world can do. It activates a master switch inside your cells called the NRF2 pathway. NRF2 is your cell's internal survival and defense system. Think of it as the emergency generator that powers up every single protective mechanism your cells have: antioxidant enzymes, anti-inflammatory proteins, detoxification systems, DNA repair machinery. As we age, NRF2 becomes progressively less responsive. Your cell's emergency generator gets sluggish. It doesn't respond as quickly or as powerfully to oxidative stress and inflammation. Sulforaphane from broccoli sprouts essentially reboots that generator. It is one of the most potent known NRF2 activators that exists in food. Why does this matter specifically for your heart?
Because your cardiac muscle cells, cardiomyocytes, are among the most metabolically demanding cells in the entire human body. They never stop working. They do not get a day off. And they produce enormous quantities of free radicals as a byproduct of that constant energy production. When NRF2 is functioning well, your cardiomyocytes can neutralize those free radicals quickly and efficiently. When NRF2 is sluggish, as it becomes after 57, the free radicals accumulate, causing a process called oxidative cardiomyopathy, the slow, silent degradation of cardiac muscle cell function. Sulforaphane directly reverses this process. Research from Johns Hopkins found that sulforaphane activated NRF2 in cardiac tissue and reduced markers of oxidative cardiomyopathy by up to 43% in aging animal models.
Human trials are ongoing, but the early data is consistent and compelling. But here is what makes broccoli sprouts uniquely valuable compared to regular broccoli. And this is the part that most people miss. Broccoli sprouts contain 50 to 100 times more sulforaphane per gram than mature broccoli florets. You would need to eat a pound of cooked broccoli to get the same sulforaphane concentration in a quarter cup of fresh broccoli sprouts. This is not a trivial difference. This is the difference between a meaningful therapeutic dose and a negligible one. The sulforaphane in broccoli sprouts is formed when a compound called glucoraphanin comes into contact with an enzyme called myrosinase, which happens naturally when the sprout tissue is chewed or lightly crushed. The sprouts are the enzyme-rich delivery vehicle. Regular broccoli is not. This is why the sprout form is essential, not optional. Now let's talk about the nighttime specific mechanism, because this is where the research gets genuinely exciting. A study published in the journal Circulation examined what happens when older adults consume sulforaphane-rich foods in the evening compared to the morning. The evening consumption group showed significantly greater overnight reduction in arterial stiffness, measured by pulse wave velocity, than the morning consumption group. The researchers theorized that this is because sulforaphane reaches peak plasma concentration in the cardiovascular tissue during the overnight hours, specifically between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., precisely when your heart's natural cellular maintenance and repair processes are most active. Think of it this way. If your heart's overnight repair crew is the night shift, sulforaphane from evening broccoli sprouts is like handing that crew a state-of-the-art toolkit instead of the worn-out equipment they've been using for 20 years. The repairs happen faster, more completely, and at a deeper cellular level.
There is another mechanism here that deserves its own conversation, and it involves something called SIRT1, or sirtuin-1. SIRT1 is sometimes called the longevity gene because it regulates the biological processes associated with cardiovascular aging, mitochondrial function in heart cells, inflammation control, arterial elasticity, and the body's response to oxidative stress. After 57, SIRT1 activity in cardiac tissue declines measurably. A study from the University of Illinois found that sulforaphane significantly upregulated SIRT1 expression in cardiac cells, effectively slowing the molecular clock of cardiovascular aging at the cellular level. In practical terms, this means the heart cells of people consuming regular sulforaphane are aging more slowly at the molecular level than the heart cells of people who are not. That is not a metaphor. That is measurable gene expression data.
For the practical application, you want a quarter cup of fresh broccoli sprouts consumed 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. Fresh sprouts are ideal because the myrosinase enzyme, the one that activates sulforaphane when you chew, remains active in raw, fresh sprouts and is partially deactivated by cooking. Unlike spinach, broccoli sprouts should not be cooked. Eat them raw. They are available in many grocery stores, and you can also grow them at home from broccoli seeds in a simple jar with a mesh lid in just 3 to 5 days. One of the most cost-effective and powerful nutritional upgrades any person over 57 can make. Synergy tip for broccoli sprouts. And this one is supported by research from the University of Illinois specifically. Pair your broccoli sprouts with a small amount of mustard. Yes, mustard. Mustard seeds are exceptionally rich in active myrosinase. When you add even a small amount of mustard to your broccoli sprouts, a half teaspoon is sufficient, you dramatically amplify sulforaphane formation because you are supplementing the sprout's own enzyme with an additional enzyme source. Studies have shown that adding mustard to broccoli increases bioavailable sulforaphane by up to 4 times. You can add your broccoli sprouts to a small bowl with a drizzle of olive oil, a pinch of sea salt, a squeeze of lemon, and half a teaspoon of whole grain mustard. Or you can incorporate them into a small evening salad alongside your cooked spinach and beet juice. The 3 work beautifully together, and the combined cardiovascular benefit of all 3 consumed together in the evening is something the research is only beginning to fully quantify. But the early data suggests the synergies are real and significant. One more thing about broccoli sprouts before I bring this all together.
The research on their impact on endothelial progenitor cells, the stem cell-like cells that your body uses to repair damaged areas of your arterial lining, is particularly relevant for anyone over 57 with cardiovascular risk factors. A study from the University of California, San Francisco, found that sulforaphane significantly increased the number and function of endothelial progenitor cells in the bloodstream of older adults with cardiovascular risk factors. In practical terms, your body is continuously trying to repair the microscopic damage that occurs every day along your arterial walls. Broccoli sprouts give it more tools, more repair cells, and better functioning ones to do that work during the hours when you are asleep and your cardiovascular system is most focused on recovery. All of the scientific references discussed in this video are available in the description below. I encourage you to read them, share them with your cardiologist or primary care doctor, and have a real conversation about incorporating these vegetables into your evening routine.
Now let me bring this all together for you, because I want you to leave this video not just informed, but genuinely changed in how you think about your heart's future. Here is what the research is telling us loudly and clearly. The idea that cardiovascular decline after 57 is inevitable, irreversible, or simply a fact of aging that must be accepted, that idea is wrong. It is outdated. It is directly contradicted by some of the most exciting cardiovascular science happening in laboratories right now. Your heart retains the capacity for repair, regeneration, and functional improvement at 62, at 69, at 75 and beyond. The question is not whether your heart can be supported. It absolutely can. The question is whether you are giving it the raw materials it needs to do the work it is already designed to do every single night while you sleep.
Beets flood your blood vessels with nitric oxide, the molecule that tells your arteries to relax, open wide, and let blood flow freely, while betalains cool the chronic inflammation that has been silently stiffening your arterial walls for years. Cooked spinach delivers magnesium to stabilize your heart's electrical rhythm, folate to clear the arterial damaging compound homocysteine, and vitamin K2 to guide calcium away from your arteries and back to your bones where it belongs. And broccoli sprouts, fresh, raw broccoli sprouts, send sulforaphane directly into your cardiac cells to reactivate your body's master defense system, slow the molecular clock of cardiovascular aging, and send more repair cells to work on the inner lining of every artery in your body. Together, these three vegetables, eaten consistently in the evening as part of a simple routine, represent one of the most accessible, affordable, and evidence-supported strategies for protecting and strengthening your heart that I know of. And a strong heart is everything. It is the ability to keep up with your grandchildren without stopping to catch your breath. It is walking where you want to walk. It is waking up every morning with energy, not exhaustion. It is independence. It is being fully, vibrantly, recognizably yourself at 68, at 74, at 81. Here is your evening heart protocol. 3 simple steps you can start tonight.
45 minutes before bed. Drink 8 ounces of pure beet juice with a squeeze of lemon juice or a few slices of bell pepper. That is your nitric oxide and anti-inflammation dose. With or immediately after dinner, half a cup of gently sautéed spinach cooked in olive oil with a clove of garlic. That is your magnesium, folate, and K2 dose. 30 minutes before bed, a quarter cup of fresh broccoli sprouts with a half teaspoon of whole grain mustard. That is your sulforaphane and NRF2 activation dose. That is it. 3 vegetables, 1 evening, every night. And I am asking you to commit to this for 30 days. Not forever, just 30 days. Your heart will not transform overnight, but the cellular repair processes that lead to real change begin from the very first night. Dorothy in Nashville moved her ejection fraction from concern to normal range in 10 weeks. Gerald in Birmingham dropped his inflammatory markers by 41% in 6 months.
Their outcomes are not exceptions. They are examples of what becomes possible when you stop accepting decline as destiny and start treating your heart with the same intentionality you would bring to anything else you care deeply about. I want to be very clear. None of this replaces your relationship with your doctor. If you are on heart medications, if you have a diagnosed cardiovascular condition, if you are managing high blood pressure or high cholesterol under medical supervision, please share this information with your physician before making changes to your routine. These vegetables are food, not medicine, and they work best as part of a comprehensive approach that includes your medical team. What I am offering you today is information. The decision to act on it and how to do so safely belongs to you and your doctor together. Your body has not given up on you. Your heart is still working for you every single second of every single day. 100,000 beats every day without a break for as long as you have been alive. The least you can do is give it the raw materials it needs to do that job as powerfully and as efficiently as possible. What you eat before bed tonight is a choice, and starting tonight, you know exactly what choice to make. If this video helped you, if it gave you something concrete to try, something to discuss with your doctor, or simply a new way of understanding what your heart needs, I would genuinely love for you to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next. We bring you the most current research on aging, heart health, nutrition, and longevity, translated out of the laboratory and into your real life, every single week. And I have one question for you before you go. Leave it in the comments below, and I promise I will read it. Which of these 3 vegetables are you going to add to your evening routine first tonight? The beets, the cooked spinach, or the broccoli sprouts? And if you have already been eating any of these in the evening, tell me. Have you noticed a difference in your energy, your blood pressure, or how you feel in the morning? Your experience matters, not just to me, but to every other person over 57 watching this who is still deciding whether change is possible for them. Your comment might be the thing that tips them toward trying. So please take 30 seconds and share it. I will see you in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.